All right, well, thank you to those who've joined us. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to this second in the series of community forums hosted by the Bedford Citizen. Our topic for today is the impact of the pandemic on academic learning and how schools will respond. Today's forum is brought to you by the Bedford Citizen and the Bedford Cultural Council. I am Sarita Pillay. I am a board member with the Bedford Citizen and also a Bedford parent. My two daughters are currently in 5th grade at the Lane School and 9th grade at Bedford High School. And I'm really delighted to open our discussion today. We have an extraordinary lineup today. We're really lucky to have who we have in this discussion, especially at this time of the school year when there is so much going on. Our panel will be moderated by our superintendent, Philip Conrad. So thank you to Phil, but also to all of our speakers who are here today, and they will each introduce themselves in a moment. At the Bedford Citizen, we have been gathering your questions for today's forum through a survey that we launched 2 weeks ago, also through Facebook and also through direct outreach to the community. So thanks to everyone that has reached out to share their thoughts, questions, and comments, either through the survey, through Facebook, and also directly with me. I really appreciate that. And I know that all of our speakers today will do their absolute best to address and respond to as many questions as possible. We also encourage you to type your questions into the chat. And again, we'll do our best to get to as many questions today. Today's event is being recorded, and that recording will be shared by the Citizen as soon as it's ready. As an attendee today, and if you've been to similar events recently, you'll know that your audio and video are automatically muted or turned off just to minimize any technical challenges that we might have. But again, we really encourage you to be vocal in the chat, to share your thoughts and questions, and also just introduce yourselves to each other. So with that, I will turn it over to Philip Conrad for introductions and to get our discussion started today.
Sarita, thank you so much. Thank you to the Citizen and thank you to the Cultural Council for hosting this tonight. It's really a nice opportunity for all of us to connect around the future as we look forward to the finish of this school year and into next school year. So I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves. I'm going to start with I'm going to have everybody go sort of in a bit of an order. So I'm going to start with Tricia, then Marianne, and then we'll go from Heather to Rob to Beth.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tricia Clifford, Assistant Superintendent.
Hey, everyone. I'm Marianne Vines. I'm the Director of Special Education.
Hello, I'm Heather Galante. I'm the principal of Bedford High School. Thanks for having me.
I'm Rob Ackerman, Lane School Principal in my 15th year.
Good evening. I'm Beth Benoit, Principal at Davis Elementary School.
Awesome. And so thank you to everybody for the questions ahead of time. There are a number of questions and they're sort of all over a little bit. So we'll try to answer them from a variety of different standpoints. And I thought, Tricia, we might get started with the ideas about how we're going to help kids get on and stay on track for the fall from where they are now. And as we think about this, and I know we've talked a lot about this, one of the things I want to really frame for people is that as we begin to think about next school year, we want to make sure that we really have an overarching or an umbrella, to cover kids, and really thinking about belonging and relationships, making sure that teachers and students are able to make those connections when they come back. They've missed being with one another, even being with masks and all of the restrictions that we've had this school year has really been one of the things, the challenges, the biggest challenges really is that sense of belonging, that creation of relationships. Another piece for us is this idea of monitoring our students' progress. And that's something we've been able to begin doing this school year in a local way. We obviously have some other ways that are statewide, but we've really been able to do that. And I think that's going to really help us as we go forward. And then the other part is to make sure that people really understand that our focus next year is going to be on making sure students get grade level appropriate instruction. So if I'm in 6th grade, I'm going to get 6th grade material. And then to make sure that that sort of in time or on time scaffolding is available for students, so that as people have enough opportunity to, the teachers see where a student might need some scaffolding, they can jump right in and scaffold. Students can scaffold for one another as well. And so those are sort of the overarching themes that I think we're going to make sure that we really put at the foundation of all of the things that we do as we go. And I think, you know, one of the things that I read recently that I really, really liked was this idea of welcoming one another with curiosity. This idea that the pandemic was different for everybody. There were some strengths gained, there were some losses, but that everybody's a little bit different, and we need to figure out where everybody is so that we can understand how do we support our students and families. And so wanted just to sort of lay it out that way. But I know, Tricia, we've talked a lot about this progress monitoring and about relationships, and I wondered if you could help people understand the assessments that we put into place this year and how those will go into really helping students and teachers and families next year.
Yeah, I think one of the important things that you sort of led with was the social emotional learning piece. And I think we're all in agreement that much work has been done and will continue to be done with social emotional learning, because we all know that students need to feel heard. They need to feel like they're part of the classroom. And so that's really a priority. That's the first step. So that's really important. One of the things to keep in mind is that when I think back a year ago, I think about the focus that we had at that point on reentering and focusing on the standards, right? What were the most important standards that we needed to make sure that we covered? And as we entered this school year, we did that, and we did that throughout the year. And so I think it's an important piece to kind of keep within the context of all of this is that there's been planning that's been going on for over a year, both as we entered next year and as we kind of come out of it this year, really focusing on the standards that we know are the most important for the grade level. So that's sort of step one. The other pieces are that this past year, we were able to put in the data-wise process. And so we were able to have assessments at all the grade levels in math and reading, and at the upper grade science. So we were able to use those assessments to really inform our instruction, both in a larger view, looking at whether or not we were actually addressing the standards and how students were doing, but also at more of a micro level, looking at individual students and seeing if they were making progress. So that's a whole piece, and I'm really glad we didn't have the hindsight, but we were lucky to be able to have that piece so that we have that information to really tell us how students have done this year. And so that's an important piece. As we look this year, there's summer work that's going to be going on this summer to make sure that we're calibrating and we've got the standards in place that we need to have at each grade level, and all the ways that we're addressing them. Also, another piece to that is we have a lot of professional development. We're really lucky in Bedford to be able to provide some great professional development. And we're really lucky too that our teachers are so invested and participatory in that professional development. We've got differentiation workshop going on for 3 days in June, which is huge because we know we need to address the different needs that students come with. We know that we're going to have to meet students where they are. And as somebody said before, everybody experiences differently, right? So what students are going to need may be varied among all of the grade levels in all of the schools. Another piece is making sure that, another process that we're implementing in Bedford is curriculum review, where we're looking at a specific curriculum area that this year we'll begin with one curriculum area. We'll form a committee, we'll do that curriculum review, and that will be an important piece, and every year we'll continue to do that. It's not to say that that hasn't been done in Bedford, but it will be a real structured endeavor as we enter this year. And other pieces, response to intervention, what we call RTI. Often when we do these assessments, we find that different students may need different help in different areas. And we use literacy specialists, other folks to help us do tiered intervention and provide kids with what they need. And so all of these things will be going on. And the good news is that much of this work we've been doing, and I think we're in a really good place to address the needs that students might have.
And I totally agree with you. And I think one of the other pieces in this curriculum review that we've been doing, and the state has really pushed us to do, is to really look at our curriculum in terms of an equity piece as well. So part of the document, and again, the state came out with a document earlier on about the acceleration roadmap. They have a really nice document that is done in collaboration with a nationwide educational agency. And it really talks about this idea of helping students to see themselves in things, so mirrors, having windows into other experiences, and having doors where they can enter into new experiences. And I know, Heather, at the high school, you guys have been looking at your curriculum in that way. Can you tell people a little bit more about how the culturally responsive part of a curriculum review is happening at the high school and will be happening at other buildings?
Sure. So we were at the beginning phases of it this year, and we've really worked with our curriculum group. We have the benefit of having a group of program administrators and directors. And so essentially, we want students, number one, to have robust and rigorous experiences in all of their classes. We want them to have consistent experiences across the department and also across the school. And we also want them to see themselves reflected in the curriculum. So there are 3 to 4 pieces of our curriculum audit and curriculum review that we're doing. What we really worked on this year as part of the beginning phases is a template. So as our faculty build their lessons within their content areas, we want to make sure that we're hitting all of these key areas. And you know, for some of you out there, objectives, formative, summative assessments will make sense and sound like common language for you. But we're also looking at tiered interventions. So teaching all students, are all students able to access this material? And if not, what accommodations are we making? Not in the IEP or special ed sense, just for all students. And also, are we looking at our lessons through a culturally proficient lens? So we've started this work with the curriculum team. It's been hard work, it's been invigorating work, and we are rolling it out to all of the departments at the beginning of next year. This is a 3-year process, which will then become iterative, and there'll be lots of review and reflection as part of this, lots of student feedback, lots of faculty feedback, lots of walkthroughs and rounds, instructional rounds that we'll do as part of it. We'll absorb this work within departments, but also as a whole school as well, in terms of our visioning, what's our mission, what are our expectations, what do we want the student learning and social emotional experience to be from grades 9 through 12. And Superintendent Conrad and Dr. Clifford will then sort of use this and launch it through pre-K to 12. So we're really at the beginning phases. It's been really exciting work. Yeah, and I'll have more updates as we progress through it next year.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather. We appreciate it. One of the other questions that came through was what are we as schools going to do to reconnect the community? And I think that's a great question and when we talk about community, just to be clear, we really talk about 3 different communities that come together to be one community. So at Bedford High, we have students from Hanscom, Bedford, and from Boston. At all of our schools, we have students from Bedford and from Boston. It's been really difficult to do Zooms and things like that, but we've done a lot of Zooms. And Beth, I know that you've done a lot with your families, and I wanted to just give you an opportunity to sort of tell people how you're connecting the Davis School to your families right now, and what some of the plans are for the fall as you go forward.
Sure. So currently, each grade level families are invited to participate in a webinar that allows for questions to be asked about the upcoming school year, what's going to look the same, what's going to look different. And we don't typically do a transition from K to 1 or 1 to 2 in a more traditional school year because those transitions are a little more fluid. But given the stress and and the transitions that took place at Davis, we wanted to make sure that every family unit had an opportunity to talk specifically about what K going to first grade is going to feel like, look like, and how children will experience that transition. Same thing from first to second. And then Rob already has done his transition meeting for families going from second grade to third. And next week we are hosting incoming kindergarten. And so some of those meetings are typical for us in a given year, and others we've tailored more specifically to the unique needs of this school year, knowing that families have more questions and more wonders as their children transition. In the fall, we will continue to have opportunities for our back to school nights and ways for families to come together in our more traditional ways. And we are adding additional pieces that will help families understand when Tricia talks about, when Dr. Clifford talks about the RTI process and what's determined, how those things are determined, we're going to bring grade level groups together to be able to have those conversations more specifically for what that means for a kindergarten age student. What would an RTI process look like? What do we mean by that? How do we determine if a student is needing a little bit more? How are we deciding when and how to differentiate? When do we decide that it's not just a little bit more, but it's in a more intense intervention that we will progress monitor over 6 weeks, and then the team will make further determinations? We're going to have families come together so they can hear about that process, learn more about the screening assessments that are used to help us in the beginning of the year, and then what that looks like over the course of the year. We know families have a lot of wonders about where their students are now given the pandemic, and we want to make sure we're providing our families with a clear picture of what we're looking at, how we make good decisions for students as they move forward, and most importantly, how we keep children engaged and happy, joyful learners, right? Like the excitement of a young learner is what's going to motivate them to do the hard work to learn to read, which it is hard work to learn to read, and some kids may make it look more easy than others, but for all kids, learning to read is a complicated process, and so we want that joy to be a part of their learning and their learning experience.
Thanks, Beth. I really appreciate that, and I think you're talking about the joy of learning, and I think that as the school year went on, and we've had a lot of conversations about this, I know, but as the school year went on, and we were able to allow more and more things, particularly for your kindergartners and first graders and second graders, and how much more joy that brought as the school year went on, as they were able to share materials, as they were able to go outside and interact at recess, as they were able to begin to have it be a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. I think that was a really important piece, and I really loved that. I loved too that at the Davis school particularly, not that it wasn't at all schools, because it was, the joy of every time we changed the model and kids got to come back for more. I remember being at the Davis school when we came back for kindergarten 5 days. The kids, it was the first day of school. Everybody treated it like the first day of school. Lane School had a big sign out, "Welcome to the first day of school," for those kind of days. It was awesome. And that excitement, that joy that all of the faculty and staff and administrators brought, was awesome. Rob, can you talk a little bit about your transition meeting and how this year's transition meeting for your second graders coming in to be third graders at the Lane School maybe was a little different, and what some of the plans are to help those kids and those families as they transition to the Lane School from the Davis School?
Yeah, well, I enjoy every year doing the transition meeting for grade 2 families. It's just nice to always welcome fresh set of parents and students who with excitement to come to a new school, but also there's always a level of anxiety. I think in many ways, parents coming from grade 2, I think like any grade, in all of us, they're just so curious what school is going to look like next year. Probably more so at the elementary level, just because of vaccines not taking place yet for our age groups. But the parents, they ask questions that would be very typical of any other year. Just trying to get a sense of what the student's day is going to look like, a sense of the learning that's going to take place. If you guys, that you've alluded to earlier with students who may have had some struggles along the way this year, whether they were remote or in person. What I do and what I've offered every year, and it already started today actually, is we offer tours throughout the summer. And they started today with 2 remote students from grade 2. And that's just a chance for me to connect with the kids, with the parents, and show them around Lane School to alleviate those jitters, that anxiety anytime you have to switch schools. As we get more information and we can get a more concrete visual for how we will look in September. And by that, I mean, are there any safety measures, those type of things. I'll be holding Zoom meetings again for families throughout the summer. Even today, a parent asked me, how are buses going to look for upper elementary school next year, which I would think would include Davis School. And the answer that I'm giving to parents is, we expect it to really look like a very normal year. There'll probably be some things, but we just are still waiting for some guidance. So I understand that, but I've been trying to impress upon all families, like the ones I had on Zoom, that, expect a normal year. And that's good. That's exciting for us to be able to present to families. So we're gearing up. We're ready. The transition meeting went fine, and we've already started. I don't remember if Beth alluded to it, but we've already started some of our classrooms from grade 2 visiting our school. I think we've had 4, I believe. 4 have come so far. They've been bussed over, walking around our school, getting to meet some 3rd graders, get to visit classrooms. Mr. Kinney and I take them on tours. The kids have all sorts of interesting questions, which really puts me in the spotlight, because some of them are quite challenging to answer. So A+ for their creativity. So it's been good. The transition feels like it started off very well between the schools, and I expect more and more transitional type activities as we head over the summer. And I should add that we're also planning a transition activity event for the middle to late August with our families from Boston. And that will be not only families from grade 2, but also families that are in any of the Lane grades. So they have an opportunity to come out and get really a close-up view in the Lane School if they've been remote for a while, to help them. So we're working on that as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. I really appreciate that. And I want to pick up on something that you said. You mentioned about the more normal aspects. And so the Department of Education has come out and has started to give us some guidance about next year, particularly around cafeterias and what we will be required and what we won't be required to do, excuse me. And we expect more guidance from them middle of June, which is almost now. So hopefully in the next few weeks, we'll get some more guidance and that will help us. Couple of things that I do want to say about this year that we're going to continue into next year that I mentioned at school committee meeting last night. So if anybody was watching there, I apologize for repeating, but I think it's really worth saying that this year we increased the volume of air exchanges in our classrooms. So typically it was around 6 times an hour that the air would change over. We moved it up to 10 times. We also changed from a regular filtration system around a MERV 6 or 7. And MERV is something that if you don't know it, it's okay. I didn't know it a year ago either. But now the highest filter is a MERV 13 filter. All of our HVAC systems have MERV 13s, and we will continue. So we're going to run the system at a higher rate so we get more exchange. We're going to continue to filter it higher than we have in the past. We're also going to continue to use the HEPA filtration systems. We have HEPA filtration systems in all of our classrooms and in all of our offices. Any space that is occupied by a staff member or a student has this HEPA filtration in it. So we're going to continue that. All of our classrooms have hand sanitizing machines outside of the classroom, sometimes some of them inside the classrooms. We're going to continue to have those. We are going to continue to disinfect We don't know at this point what DESE's guidance around disinfecting is going to be, so we're waiting to hear, but we will continue to disinfect, and we will have PPEs available for anyone who wants them. So if there are students or families that need face masks or shields or anything like that, we will have them and we will make them available probably the way we did this year through the front offices and the nurses. So those are some of the things that we did physically this year that we're going to do into the future so that we have them. We also, with the heat this week, we were able to secure some more air conditioning units, so we were able to cool off more classrooms. Thank you to Mr. Tessiarlani for his work. He's unbelievable. So I wanted to do that. There were a couple of questions around budget. And so I wanted to just touch base on the budget. There was a question about, did we adjust the budget for next year? We are very, very fortunate, and I will continue to say it. I said it last night, and I will continue to say it. We're so fortunate to be in Bedford. We did receive a budget that has both our regular budget, and that budget increase was about a 3.8% budget increase. And we also, the Finance Committee put aside a Finance Committee reserve fund that we can draw on if we need to make sure that our class sizes are smaller, to make sure that our SEL needs are taken care of, whatever needs that we have that are related to the new school year and the continuation of making sure students get the learning that they need. We have that from the town, and that was a commitment from the town, from the Finance Committee. And again, we are so very lucky. What we have also done, though, and I want to make sure that everybody's clear on this, is that we have committed to using any federal or state funds that we receive first. So we will use town funds last, and we've made a commitment to the Finance Committee, to the school committee, and to the town government that that's how we will do that. And we're excited that we are able to have the backup so that in case we need it for whatever, we have it, and we would just go to the Finance Committee and let them know why we needed it, and hopefully they would approve that. So that was a question that I know was asked a couple of times. I just wanted to touch base on that and make sure that was clear. There was a question that just came in tonight, I think, that was really around trauma-sensitive classrooms, and I'm sorry that Alicia Lindsay, our Director of Counseling, isn't here tonight. But
I can answer that, Phil.
Please go ahead. Yeah,
at my school, we ran the training. So Leah, thank you for that plug. Leah was on our faculty last year. I'm so glad that you remember. We're sad to have lost you, but yeah, so at the high school, we ran a trauma sensitive training last year and wove that theme throughout the course of the year. This year, we revived that training actually at the onset of the school year, knowing that we were still in the midst of a pandemic. Our teachers and faculty members really wanted sort of a reminder of what they had learned the year before. So it was fully attended by our faculty and staff. What I will tell you new this year that wasn't in place last year at the high school was our advisory program. So if you've seen me at all at any forum this year, I have talked about our consultancy with Rachel Polliner as funded by our Bedford Education Foundation. The advisory program was not supposed to be launched until the next school year, so 2021, 2022. So we incorporated it into the schedule for this school year, premature of any of the training. It ended up going really, really well because we have fantastic faculty members who were all on board and thought in a year of disconnection that our students were going to crave this connection through the advisory program. So our students are matched with an adult in the building, and twice a 6-day cycle, they are with a group, grades 9 through 12, consistently through the course of the year. And there's lots of advice given, lots of sharing, lots of support that happens through the advisory program. It is only going to get better next year. So our students will stay together. It will continue through the course of next year. We will continue to evaluate how well it's working. We are going to have an end of year survey for all students. We're also going to give it to parents, caregivers, and also our faculty and staff. And one of the questions will be, do you have an adult connection in the building? So we're going to sort of assess how we're doing and use that to plan for next year. So our teachers are well versed in trauma sensitive practices. We're going to continue to do that training at the high school. I know that it's been woven throughout the entire school system. And I did also want to pivot. Is that still a word that people are like, ooh, a little bit and share? I know that Beth and Rob shared how they're going to build community in their schools next year. You know, the high school, of course, our students have a rigorous academic offering. Our teachers are so skilled and wonderfully prepared to teach our students. We have tons of resources. Again, it's Bedford. We're really fortunate to have those academic resources. But also integral to the high school experience are those activities, those extracurriculars, those class events that are so important to students. So I wanted to reassure those watching tonight and who will watch in the future that as a team, we are very thoughtfully planning for some of those activities and events at the high school. Our 9th graders didn't have a typical onboarding. They lost DC, they lost Canopy. So what can we do to give them sort of this communal connection that they are so craving? Our sophomores are going into junior year. You know, we all say junior year is so stressful. So how do we mitigate that for them? And how do we bring them back as a community? The same for our seniors. So we're thinking individually as a class, but also then as a school community. So know that that's very much part of our conversation and planning at the high school as we head into next year. So I just wanted to reassure you all, and for all of the parents and caregivers out there, I said this at graduation, your students have been rock stars this year. They are unbelievable. They are so joyful to lead and teach. But I do want to let you know, we are also planning for a potential struggle. So if next year, you know, doesn't go as planned and there are some struggles and challenges, we are going to be, again, there to help and get them through post-pandemic pressures. So I hope that you feel reassured. I just wanted to share that.
Thanks, Heather. I appreciate that. And Beth, I know that at the Davis School and Rob at the Lane School, you have you create communities and there's a real sense of responsibility within the classroom. Can you talk a little bit about what would be the Davis School version of an advisory and how that works, responsive classroom?
Sure, and the exciting thing for both Rob and I is that both at Davis and at Lane, our teachers are using the responsive classroom approach. And so the real positive aspects of responsive classroom, there's so many, but there's the alignment that happens between the elementary schools with responsive classroom, which has focused class meetings to talk about the day ahead, set goals that you want to achieve that day, share advice with each other from the day before, and make that plan. That happens and is built on every year. So when you think about a kindergartner starting their day, thinking about what their goal is, and then a 5th grader after 5 years of having that same kind of experience, being able to use the same format with their peers to set goals for their day, goals for what they're hoping for the year. It really is a powerful way of helping kids connect. And that the importance of a responsive classroom is, while that might be your individual goal, you have a community help you achieve it. And that's the focus, is how do you keep your own unique individuality and excitement? Sometimes you might have group goals, but you also can have your own goal, but you got a team behind you helping to reach that and giving advice and giving feedback and support, and that builds on. And when Heather talks about advisories, when I've heard Kevin talk about it at the middle school, it follows a similar format of creating that team to help children as they develop and they are facing the challenges of both learning and the challenges of socialization, that they have a group that they can connect with. And so responsive classroom really kind of keeps that focus. The other nice piece about responsive classroom is that it's built off of resilient theory. And so when you think about trauma sensitive classrooms and how we help to support kids as they adjust to change, Responsive Classroom has given real clear policies and procedures on how you can go about creating those environments for students and those opportunities to feel safe within the community, because the expectations are predictable, the routines are predictable, and I know how to navigate through that. And so Responsive Classroom really helps with both that community piece as well as that resiliency for children as they adjust through change.
That's great. Thanks, Beth. I really appreciate it. Rob, you want to jump in and add
Yeah,
to that?
The only thing I would add, and Beth did a nice job of summarizing Responsive Classroom, is because the elementary students spend 80% of the day with, by and large, one adult, it's a huge focus on our school with who we hire, the types of conversations we have. Teachers have to connect with the kids. When a student comes to the Lane School, when they go to that classroom 180 days a year, they have to look forward to being in that classroom, connecting with the teacher, being able to connect with their peers. It's everything. If that's not going well, then it's going to be a very difficult year. So we spend a lot of time talking about it, talking about the types of things teachers need to do to really create the environment that students want to be in for 180 school days a year. Even as we're doing the interviewing right now for next year for some of our open positions, and I know Beth feels the same way, we have to find adults that have that ability to connect with kids. We use the term, warm demander, and it makes so much sense. We need people that are warm, that connect, but also demand, have high expectations for our students academically, behaviorally, and that's what we're looking for. And I think both of our schools do a really good job at it, but we're always trying to get better as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rob. That's awesome. And actually, it's funny because Beth and I just met with a candidate who we actually just hired, who we were really excited about because of her experience with Responsive Classroom and her desire to really bring that warm demander into the classroom. So that was a really exciting, and Rob's absolutely right. It's really part of the conversation that we have with people who are coming into Bedford. One of the questions in the Q&A that I want to jump onto is what about the middle school? And I know Kevin's not here tonight, and I'm sorry about that, but I want to say that the middle school does a couple of things that really help the students transition. They do have an advisory period very similar to the high school that helps students to really connect to one another, and as Beth said, have a team approach. The teachers are also in a team. So the nice thing is that even though the students will now start to travel and be with different teachers throughout their day, that team of teachers has that student and can really put some safety rails around that student, can really scaffold for that student, can figure out what that student needs and how to get them their needs met. The middle school really has a whole child approach, which is a really wonderful approach to making sure that the child has the social emotional, the connected, the academic, and then, as Heather was mentioning earlier, the activities, making sure that they have the opportunity to be involved with all kinds of different clubs, athletics, arts, and I'll put in a plug for You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, which is Friday and Saturday this weekend. They have that opportunity to do all of those things. And I think if Kevin were here, he would tell you about how wonderful our sixth grade team is. And that really segues into another question, which is about literacy. And I know people are thinking about the literacy plan. And one of the big changes will be in our sixth grade, where students will have a writing and a reading class so that we can really help them, as Beth said earlier, to make sure that they are able to have that solid foundation in literacy, because we know how important that is to everything that they do. So Tricia gave a big presentation last night at school committee about the literacy. I don't want to go too much into it, but can you just give people some highlights of what we're doing around literacy because of its importance and because of the fact that kids are going to be coming back in different places as we move forward next year?
Yeah, so just a quick overview. There are 5 goals in the literacy plan, and really one of the major pieces is to really make sure that We're addressing the curriculum where we need to be. Phil just spoke about the 6th grade change where there will be a reading class for every student and a writing class. I was lucky, I've been part of those meetings with the 6th grade team and the PAs around that. We met today, so I'm really excited about the additional instructional time that we're going to be spending on writing and reading, and really being able to differentiate. You know, one of the goals really speaks, out of the 5 goals really speaks to differentiation, and we're doing that via the workshop model. We've been doing that at the elementary level. We'll be starting that now at the middle school. And so it provides sort of some scaffolding and some intervention within those classes in the workshop model for kids who need that. But it also provides kids who maybe can not only read an independent book, can read the guided reading book, but can also be reading a few other books. And so it kind of spans. That's really one of our focuses, is to make sure that kids are getting what they need in relation to reading and learning in an environment that's supportive, and that's what that 6th grade piece will do. But really the 5 goals really span so many things: differentiation, assessment, professional development for teachers, making sure that it's part of our vision and part of the school plans. Much of the work at the elementary level is really around the teaching of reading and writing and making sure that phonics is embedded, that we're also providing as much training to teachers as possible, and that we're also checking to make sure that in the area of phonics, that once we've taught that we assess whether or not students have mastered those skills, and if they haven't, seeking an intervention, whether it's fluency, how at the rate at which someone's reading. And then obviously one of the most important things when you're reading is comprehension, right? Do students understand? And so in the relations to reading, all of those things are things that we're looking to improve through both the curriculum and the assessment. And then also writing. Writing is a big piece and is something that we continue to implement with our units of study at the elementary level, and then up through the middle school. We've got some really good common assessments. So those are all things that are part of the literacy plan, and I won't go into detail, but it's really exciting, the work that's already happened in the district, and I'm really excited about the direction we're moving.
Absolutely is, and thank you for your leadership on that. And I know that we talked a lot about it last night. The literacy plan is on the school's website. There's also a blog that has information about the literacy plan and its implementation this year, so I would recommend people go there. I want to get Marianne involved because I know that she has a wealth of information. And so one of the things I want to ask Marianne is really about, as you talk to your special educators and as you talk to other special education directors in the area, what are the most common concerns that you're hearing for special education students as we look at going into next year?
I think that the biggest concerns that we talk about with my peers, with my special ed PAs across the district, I think the first and foremost is the social emotional needs of our students, and how the pandemic has really impacted our students to be able to connect with one another. I mean, some of our students had a really difficult time before and needed some really direct support in that area, and during a pandemic that was much more difficult for us to provide in the group settings that they needed it to be provided in. So we were very, very fortunate, like you said, in so many ways to be able to bring our students back much sooner than a lot of my peers in other districts. So that was really beneficial. And we've already been able to start that work. Again, as you just heard from Beth and Rob and Heather, this work is embedded throughout the school curriculum, throughout our school day. So in special ed here in Bedford, we're not doing that in isolation, right? It's really a group effort. And then I feel very fortunate that we're able to work very closely and have a director of counseling, again, which I know a lot of other districts don't have, but Alicia's been very instrumental in helping us to make sure we provide together her counselors and our special ed adjustment counselors with the support they need to be able to support our students. So I'm feeling as though we're in a good place, but it does remain a concern, and it's something that we talk about all the time, and it's something that we're prepared to continue to work on for the upcoming year. And then the other concern that I hear a lot of, and my peers hear a lot of, is about concerns about reading instruction for the younger grades. in reading acquisition, and students that are in the younger grades, kindergarten, first and second grade, and how has the pandemic impacted their ability to learn reading. Again, like I said, we're fortunate that we were able to bring so many children back so much quicker, and able to address this. I think our teachers, our general education teachers and our special education teachers came together in a way this year during the pandemic that I've never been able to see before. It's one of the silver linings of COVID is how the teams work together to make sure that our students, whether they were general ed or special ed, that they were all receiving the type of instruction that they needed, whether it be remotely or in person. I can't even explain to you what it looked like to see teachers teaching in both modalities simultaneously and doing it so well. But, and again, that work that Dr. Clifford has started with the assessment, I think we have a better handle on where our students are at and how we can intervene quickly than we ever did in previous years. So that's really a positive thing. But those are really the two, if I had to choose two, those would be the two biggest concerns that I hear.
Awesome. Thank you, Mariana. And I want to come off of what you were saying with the Director of Counseling on Alicia's program. One of the things that is happening this summer, it's actually already started to happen and it will happen this summer, is that the counselors at JGMS are going to be trained in the Ruler system. Ruler is a social emotional learning system is the wrong word. It's not really a system. It's really a way of thinking about emotions, about regulating one's emotions, understanding one's own emotions. And it's a program that's out of Yale University and it's run by Dr. Mark Brackett. And so there has been a book group all spring. We are reading his book, Permission to Feel. We will be going to training this summer along with the counselors at JGMS, and they will be rolling it out even more than they already have. And so that's been something that Alicia has been doing. We've also joined a consortium of communities in this area around social emotional learning and around the mental health awareness. You'll notice that this spring, and actually this whole school year, we have put on a number of webinars, virtual programs for adults, for caregivers, for teachers, for students, really around these issues about how we make sure that everybody understands how to take care of themselves, both physically and in terms of their own mental health and their social emotional well-being. And we will continue to do that. And so, Alicia has been really instrumental in that. And part of that are surveys that will go out that we will be able to look at and see how students and families are doing with their social emotional state and with their mental health. And that's really, really important. I know there's a question about virtual education. And I wanted to just address that going into next year, the Department of Education already has some virtual schools. TECA is one. There's a Commonwealth virtual school. There's the single district virtual schools. Those will continue to exist. As a school district, we will not have, as we did at the high school and middle school level, we won't have the one school model. And at the elementary schools, we won't have a remote academy or remote teachers the way we did. We will revert, and this is one of the things we've gotten from Jesse, the guidance we've gotten, is that we will revert back to students who need to be out for medical reasons. And we have home hospital tutoring, and we have other avenues for them. But we won't have this, this virtual world that we've had sort of going on parallel to our in-school world or in-person world. So we'll go back to one. Questions will be around what do we do with virtual learning in terms of if we were to be hit by a variant, or more common would be a snow day, right? What do we do with that kind of thing? And those will be decisions that we'll make over the summer. We'll talk to our teachers, we'll talk to the community and see where people are at with that. So that's something. There was also another question about vaccines and are we going to require vaccination for our teachers and or for our students? And the answer is no, we are not going to require it. There are protocols in place for those who are not vaccinated. There are recommendations if you aren't vaccinated, what you should do in terms of distancing and mask wearing and that kind of stuff. We are hoping instead that we will get, and we're on our way to being in the 75 to 80% range of students and faculty who are vaccinated, and through that will give us a herd immunity, and that's what we are going to rely on. We've been very fortunate. Our community has jumped on vaccinations. Thank you to the Health and Human Services Department. We actually hosted a vaccination clinic at JGMS earlier this spring, and as soon as we know what is available for younger students, we will probably be involved with that as well. Right now, students 12 and up can get vaccinated. Teachers have been vaccinated for a while. We were fortunate to get vaccinated a little earlier than the rest of the population. So it was really, really nice that happened. It happened a little later than we would have liked, but now that it's done, none of us are complaining, right? We're all happy to be vaccinated. So those are a couple of questions that I know were in there. There's one question that this is a question that I certainly haven't thought about how to do this. And I'm really curious what the panelists think. And I think this might be, so I'm going to ask it and I'm going to give people a little bit of wait time to think about this. But there's a question about the concern about how to separate children from their electronic devices. And what advice would you give to parents as they move from a year where we've really relied heavily at all grade levels, right? From Seesaw up to Google Classroom. What would your advice be for a parent to make that adjustment and to sort of separate the child from the electronic device? So I want to give a moment of wait time, and then I'm going to ask everybody to jump in quickly, because unfortunately, believe it or not, we are running out of time. We're almost done. Go ahead, Rob.
It's a great question. We get that we've had this question throughout the year from parents. And if I interpret the question correctly, I think what the parent's asking, but let me know if I'm wrong, Phil, is kind of what they do in the home front.
Yes.
For being able to separate their child from the technology. The answer, it's kind of hard to say, but the answer is not often what maybe some people want to hear, but the parents really have to become the parents, and they just have to tell the kids, here's when you can use it, here's when you can't. And they have to be, strong enough to tell the child when they can and can't use their phone, their iPad, their Xbox, whatever it might be. And I say this having two children of my own who love nothing more than to be on their phones and to be playing video games. So you have to be strong, and you just have to step up to the plate as a parent and let the children know, here's when you can use it, and here's when you're not going to use it. It's not easy. It's really, really difficult. And most of us, myself included, absolutely fail at times doing this. But it's really the only true way that you can do it, is you have to talk to your kids about it, educate them about the downside, and just set limits. But it's not easy, but I know of no other way. And if someone else has a better way, I'm happy to listen.
Thanks, Rob.
Yep.
Anybody else?
I would say, at the secondary level, especially at the high school, we're teaching responsible use. In, a lot of, in the transition from middle to high school, there is not a traditional cell phone policy, because we want students to be able to use their phone. They literally have, a lot of information within that little device. So we're teaching them how to investigate, how to be curious learners, how to decipher what is good information from not great information. We also are a one-to-one high school. So we'd be hypocritical if we were saying no devices at all the time. It is a struggle, but what I will tell you is in a large portion of classes, the instruction is strong, so students are engaged. And I think people have this image of students just on their devices all day long, walking with their heads in the hallway, buried in the phone. That is not the case. You know, we're having conversations, we're really teaching social etiquette, we're making eye contact, we're making the rounds at lunches and in the hallways. And, you know, students do a really nice job at school not being glued to their device. It is a struggle, as Rob said, as at home. You know, you can't at the high school level just take them away. You can certainly at times, but these kids are learning how to drive. They're going into the military. They're going to college soon. So to just sort of arbitrarily take it away and say, no, 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 is really sort of hard and maybe counterintuitive to what they'll experience post high school. So we really do drive home responsible use at the high school. We weave it into our health curriculum so they hear it over and over again. And it's really an elongated curriculum that they talk about. It's in our peer leadership class. We do it even through social studies, sort of false information, what's good research, that sort of thing. We're talking about it constantly as an administrative team. Our counselors are also having those conversations with students. We're helping parents out this summer because we're collecting all the iPads and attaching keyboards and upgrading them so they won't have the high school iPad this summer. But again, with Rob, no judgment here. It's a struggle, you know, as a parent. It's definitely a struggle as a school leader. It's easier for me as a school leader to enforce these than as a parent. So there's a book called iGen that I read as an educator and parent. It was transformative for me. So I think, you know, maybe we can run a book group next year and all commiserate together. So that could be something we could offer.
That's awesome. Thank you, Heather. I appreciate it. And as much as I would love to hear, Beth, you have 30 seconds if you want to jump in. Did you want to jump in? No, you're good. All right, because we have little over a minute to go, and I know that we want to end on time. So I just want to say thank you to all of you for spending the time with us tonight. I want to thank all of the Bedford Public Schools employees for all of their hard work this year. I want to thank the community for its support. We really are truly blessed, and we feel it every day. And so just want to say thank you. And then I just want to say thank you to Marianne, Tricia, Rob, Beth, and Heather for taking time out at this busy time to be with us tonight and to help us to answer questions from parents. I'm sorry we didn't get to them all. I know we didn't get to them all, but we tried to do our very best. So Sarita, thank you so much for inviting us.
Thank you again. Thank you all so much. Thank you to our panel today, Rob Ackerman, Beth Benoit, Tricia Clifford, Philip Conrad, Heather Galante, and Marianne Vines. And again, Phil is our moderator. Thank you very much for making the time here to answer the questions and be part of this community. We know you are supported by many others that are not here today, behind the scenes and in your schools and in the district. So all of our appreciation goes to all of those individuals as well. Really appreciate the thoughtful, incredibly thoughtful responses that you had to this incredibly wide range of questions that we received tonight, and also the questions that we received during the event in chat. So thank you to the 40 some individuals that joined us tonight and for being active in the chat and sharing your thoughts and questions. Again, this webinar has been recorded, and the Bedford Citizen will share the recording when it's available very soon, hopefully in the next week or so. Once again, this event was made possible by the Bedford Citizen and through support from the Bedford Cultural Council. So thank you very much to them for that support. Again, thanks to all who joined us tonight and for participating in this discussion. And on behalf of the Bedford Citizen, I wish everyone the best for the end of the school year and the summer. So thank you all very much and have a good evening.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.